So, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, everybody. My name is Lauren Hubbard. I am the Associate Editor, Digital Content here at the UMass Amherst Libraries, and I have the privilege of being one of the co-leads of our Du Bois Falcons team. So, this is our annual Peregrine Falcons 101 workshop that we do in order to kind of give a beginner birder friendly approach to figuring out all the stuff about the peregrine falcons that nest on the roof of our building. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk about how to identify a peregrine falcon, where you can find them, their nesting season, what a typical nesting season would look like. As those who have been following along with us know, we are not in the middle of a typical nesting season, so we will talk about what's going on with our nest box as well. And we'll also talk about the incredible conservation story comeback that the peregrine falcons had. Okay, let's get started. Oops. There we go. All right, so what is a peregrine falcon? So the scientific name for a peregrine falcon is Falco peregrinus. The falco part comes from the Latin word falx, which means sickle shape, and that refers to the shape of the peregrine's wings in flight, its beak, and is also curved, and also its talons. Peregrinus comes from Latin, which means traveling or wandering, because many peregrine falcons migrate. The peregrine falcons we have where we are in New England, they typically only migrate during their first year, and then they'll come back and they don't really do that again. But in other parts of the world, peregrine falcons have an annual migration. Peregrine falcons are considered birds of prey. And a rough definition for birds of prey is these are birds that evolved from a common ancestor, which was a prehistoric bird that lived on land and ate vertebrates, so animals with backbones. And many of that ancestor's descendants continue to have that same lifestyle of living on land and eating vertebrates. Peregrine falcons eat other birds, birds are vertebrates, so they qualify. They are also considered to be raptors, and we're not talking about the ones from Jurassic Park, although those are pretty cool. The word raptor also comes from Latin, raptare, which means to seize and carry off, which refers to how these birds grasp and carry their prey using their feet. One of the most common questions that my Du Bois Falcon team members and I get are, okay, I have this picture of this bird that I saw outside my window. Is it a falcon or is it a hawk? How do I know? So we're going to take a moment and look at the characteristics of a peregrine falcon. So on the, oops, sorry, I'm just entering people from the waiting room. On the left here, this is Webster. He is our current male. We've had him since 2022. He is banded, so we know his history. He was hatched on the Calvin Coolidge Bridge in 2019, and he's been an excellent father to a bunch of chicks since he joined us. Now, he's got typical peregrine falcon characteristics, so he's got the slate gray backside, he's got the buffy white underside with the black stripes and markings, he's got a black crown on his head, a gray crown on his head with black malar stripes under his eyes. And if you've ever seen football players or baseball players wear the black makeup underneath their eyes, that protects them from the sun glare so they can still see, and it works the exact same way for peregrine falcon malar stripes. Webster also has the typical yellow sear on his beak and yellow feet. Some people call them Cheeto feet because that's kind of the color of peregrine falcon feet. And also, Webster has the typical raptor tomial tooth, which is a little notch in his beak that they use to sever the vertebrates of the prey items that they are eating. He also has incredibly sharp talons on his feet. He has three toes facing forward, one toe facing back, called a hallux. And so if you see a banded adult peregrine falcon on our roof, it is most likely going to be Webster because the other females that have been vying for the territory are all unbanded at this point. Now, peregrine falcons look a little different when they are in their juvenile coloring. So here on the right side, we have a juvenile peregrine falcon, and you can see they're in shades of brown. They will keep those colors through their first molt when they start to get the adult gray and white coloring. The brownish shades of their feathers when they are juveniles acts as a protection for them, so when they are flying through other adult peregrine falcons' territories, they are not considered to be a threat, and they're able to kind of have a free pass to fly through, typically. So where can you find peregrine falcons? The cool thing is they are found on every single continent except Antarctica. And there's approximately 19 subspecies that have been identified of peregrine falcon. If you notice where we are in the New England area, North America, we have a little star there, and it says reintroduced mixed races. We'll get into that a little bit more in the conservation section of this workshop, but suffice it to say that when peregrine falcons became endangered, in our area, they were completely extirpated or wiped out. So, in order to repopulate, a bunch of different subspecies were kind of bred together in order to repopulate them in our area. So where can you find peregrine falcons? For any Star Wars fans out there, you can kind of think of peregrine falcons as like the Obi-Wan Kenobi of birds because they like the high ground. Um, they love nesting in high up places for a couple different reasons. One is so that they can survey their territory because they have incredible vision and they like to be able to see everything. And the other is because they like to nest above the flight threshold of great horned owls because great horned owls, if given the opportunity, will prey on peregrine falcon chicks. So if they nest in a place above where a great horned owl is able to fly, that adds an extra layer of protection for their chicks. Out in the wild, you'll see peregrine falcons nest typically in cliff sides, like in the picture on the left over here, and in urban settings, such as where we are at UMass Amherst, they pick the highest buildings that they can find. And in a lot of urban places, such as where we are, um, they will be encouraged to nest on buildings because humans will put up human-made nest boxes. And one of the reasons for that is because of pigeon poop. So in a lot of cities, as you'll see, um, there are a lot of pigeons, and while we love pigeons, they're really great for a lot of things. Their poop is acidic and corrosive and causes over time a lot of structural damage to buildings, to vehicles, etc. And as a matter of fact, UMass Amherst, before we had falcons, was spending over $100,000 a year in pigeon poop cleanup. Now, if you bring in their natural predators, um, that changes things. So, my colleague on the Du Bois Falcon team, Richard Nathorst, in 1998, he successfully petitioned for UMass Amherst to put up the first nest box on the roof of the library. And once the Falcons took to it, we have no longer had the six-figure pigeon poop expenditures, which is pretty great. Now, on the right there, I have two pictures of nest boxes. The first one was one that we had for many years, and we eventually took it down a couple years ago because it was a little too weathered. And the one on the bottom is what our current nest box looks like. And if you notice, it's got definitely a more narrow opening. And that was done intentionally because of all the climate change that we've seen and how the winter weather has been so unpredictable. In order to help insulate the female while she is incubating the eggs a little bit better, we made that design change and we've seen it really help save our past couple of nesting seasons when it gets too cold so she doesn't have to abandon the eggs to find other shelter and that the eggs don't freeze if snow and ice kind of get in under the gravel. So that's been really great to see. We're going to talk about what a typical nesting season looks like. Again, that's not what we're seeing this year. So these are pictures from some of our previous nesting seasons. So around February is when we start seeing the pair return to the nest box. They kind of don't really use it as much during the winter because they've expanded their territory to do hunting and everything like that. So around February is when we start to see them come back. And we'll see them do a lot of courtship rituals. The main one that you'll see is the male and the female bowing their heads to each other. And that is a symbol of pair bonding, and they'll do that an awful lot. The male will also provide prey item gifts to the female. So instead of flowers and chocolate, she gets dead birds, to each their own. And all of that courtship leads to mating. Now, typically, we see mating happen mid-February to end of March. And again, that's not what we're seeing this time, but we'll get into that at the end of the presentation. So typically mating and mid-February to end of March, we will see in late March, early April, the females start to lay eggs. A typical peregrine falcon clutch is, oh, I see a number in the chat. Oh, thank you. So typically, we will see a clutch of 2 to 4 eggs, although they can be 3 to 5. One of our previous females, actually, her name was Cranberry. She was the female we had before Miriam, and her number, I believe, was 72 over BV. She was one of the chicks from the state's first recorded 5 egg successful clutch, I believe in 2019, from the Verizon Tower in Brockton, Massachusetts. So that's really cool. Peregrine falcon eggs are pinkish brownish and spotted, and the female will start hard incubation or constant incubation. Sorry, someone's entering the waiting room. I just want to admit them. The female will start constant incubation, hard incubation, once the second to last egg is laid, and that allows all of the eggs to develop and hatch around the same time. Incubation is a little over a month for a peregrine falcon, so we've got 33 to 35 days. The female will do the majority of that incubation, but the male does tag team her out so she can get off the nest, stretch her wings. He'll put caches of prey items for her in the nest box and in other areas designated for food sharing. And something interesting that you will note is that when you see a male and a female doing their turns on incubation, the male often struggles to fit all of the eggs and later the chicks underneath him. And that is because of a trait in peregrine falcons called sexual dimorphism, which means the males are smaller than the females. In this case, the males are about a third smaller than the females, and it actually works out to both sexes' benefits. So for the females, yes, it enables them, their large size enables them to fit all the eggs under them and do better incubation, and it also acts as a protection against aggressive males. Now, for the males, being smaller actually helps them out with their hunting. So they're smaller, they're faster, they can hunt these smaller, faster prey items that are more abundant in their territory, so they're more easily able to provide for their family. Oops, there. And so after that 33 to 35 day mark, we start to see signs of hatching. So if you look at the picture on the left there, there's a white spot on one of the eggs, and that is called a pip. That is the first crack or hole in the egg made by the hatching chick inside. They have a temporary little egg tooth on their beak, and that allows them to break through the shell. Now, hatching is a super long and difficult process for these chicks. It can take between 24 to 48 hours. When they get out, they are absolutely exhausted. And they look like the picture on the right there. They're little 1.5 ounces of down fluff, and they have a face only a mother could love, and we love them dearly. If you'll also notice, the peregrine falcon adult in that picture on the right is eating the eggshell. And they will do that because for them it's a source of vitamins and nutrients. So at this point, the chicks are called nestlings, and for about 10 days after they hatch, the peregrine falcon adults will continue to incubate them because the chicks at that point are not able to regulate their own body temperatures. And they will also bring them small, frequent meals throughout the day. They'll bring in the prey items, they'll tear off small pieces of the prey items and feed it to the chicks. And very quickly, that 1.5 ounces of fluff will grow to what you see on the right there. Something interesting to note about peregrine falcon chicks is for several weeks they are unable to stand because their legs aren't strong enough. It's not like when you see chickens, baby chickens running around a barnyard very quickly after they are hatched. So, peregrine falcons will do, if any of you out there are familiar with the TV show Bluey, um, so the peregrine falcons will do what Bluey calls a bum shuffle. So they'll scoot around on their butts and also their tarsi, which is the length of leg between what would be an ankle and a kneecap. And they'll just kind of scoot around to get around the nest box area until their legs are able to withstand their weight. Such as in this picture. This is 3 weeks later. They grow very fast. Peregrine falcons at the 3 week mark are pretty much the size that they're gonna be as adults. And also, if you've noticed, they are standing, so they are able to. Oh, I'm sorry, I just got a message in the chat. What was the lump on their neck in the last slide? Oops. Yes, I can talk about that. That is called a crop. And so when peregrine falcons eat something, their food first goes to the crop in their neck, which is where it's going to get broken down so that it can travel down into their stomachs and be continued to digest. When you see a peregrine falcon chick with a bulging area on their neck, that means they are being incredibly well fed, and that is what we like to see. Thank you for asking that. I will take questions. I can take questions throughout, and also we can have a Q&A section at the end. So thank you for stopping me for that. Okay, so 3 weeks, adult size. They're kind of like big puppies. They have to grow into their feet. Um, so here we have them growing in their juvenile feathering. We have them standing up, and this is also the point when we would bring in the mass wildlife folks to band them. These bands, it's basically just like wearing a bracelet. It doesn't hurt them. Since they are pretty much their adult sizes, we don't have to worry about them growing out of their bands and them being uncomfortable. They're not electronic bands in any way. They don't track GPS. It's just kind of an identifier for any birders out there. And we have had some of our chicks in the past be identified when they leave the nest. So we had a female chick several years ago that was nesting in a church in 86th Street in New York City and had several successful chick clutches of her own. We also found one of our chicks was recorded on Plum Island during his first year migration. So it's really cool to be able to say, hey, that was one of our alumni. Um, at this point is also when we see branching behavior, which basically just means they're exploring outside of the nest box. Then we get to the 7 week mark, and that's when we start to do fledge watch. Leading up to that point, we will see the peregrine falcon chicks start to do a lot of wing flapping exercises. That's going to strengthen their wing muscles. And they'll do short hop flights around the roof to start with before they eventually take off. And that's it for them. Then they're fledglings and they're juveniles. And that's the point when they start to fly after their parents in the air. Their parents will teach them all the adult peregrine falcon skills that they're going to need. They're going to teach them how to stoop, how to hunt, how to fly, how to do their taxes, all things adults need. And just kidding about the taxes. And then the juveniles, and late summer, we will start to see them leave the nest and start their own first year migration. Again, they'll probably go towards the east because they like to eat all those shorebirds during the winter. And once that's done, they'll come back out this way, not to this specific area because this is their parents' territory. But they'll try to find their own area within this area. I'd like to talk about flight for just a minute more because it is one of the coolest things about peregrine falcons. They are, in fact, the fastest animal in the entire world when they are in their dives or stoops. So you can see what a stoop looks like in that right picture there. The peregrine falcons all tucked in, and they have special respiratory and circulatory systems that allow them to safely dive at speeds of over 240 miles per hour, which, to put in perspective, is faster than some cars in the Indianapolis 500. So when a peregrine falcon sees a prey item, that's when they go into dive mode. They will stoop and they will knock the prey item out of the sky. Then they'll grab it with their talons and carry it off. And, you hear bad things about airline food, but these guys love their meals in the sky. And another cool thing about peregrine falcon stoops is that their aerodynamics have been studied and used in the development of different jets and other planes. So now we're going to talk a little bit about conservation because it is such an amazing comeback story. The picture that I have on the screen right now, these are not peregrine falcon eggs, but it was one of the best photographs that I was able to find to illustrate what happened to peregrine falcons and other raptors. So on the left here, that's an egg, right? Looks exactly like an egg. The thing on the right there, that little shriveled thing, that's also an egg, but it is an egg that was affected by the chemical pesticide called DDT. DDT was a chemical pesticide that was popularized in the late 30s to prevent bugs from eating farmers' crops. And it was also used, fun fact, not so fun fact, during World War II as a bug spray for soldiers to prevent them from getting bit by mosquitoes and contracting malaria and other diseases. We thought it was a really great thing. But turns out DDT was incredibly bad for human health and for the environment. So, what happened was there was an effect in the environment called biomagnification. And biomagnification basically just means the higher you get up the food chain, the more DDT was getting concentrated in the animals. So, to put that in perspective, you've got all these little bugs and they're eating the plants and they get the DDT in them. Okay, well, how many bugs would a small bird consume? A lot, right? So now you've got the bird and it's got a lot more DDT in it than an individual bug. Well, how many birds would a raptor consume? A lot, right? So now you've got an even higher concentration of DDT in the raptor. And at that point, you get the effects that led to this shriveled little egg. DDT messed with the raptors' biology and chemistry and prevented them from having the calcium that they needed to create the eggshells that were hard and thick and able to be incubated and hatch. If you've got thin eggshells and soft eggshells, they're not going to hatch. You're not going to have chicks. The bird population is going to plummet drastically. And that's what happened to peregrine falcons and plenty of other raptors, including California condors, bald eagles, ospreys. It was not looking good. They all became very endangered. And as I said, in our area, peregrine falcons were completely wiped out. And that's why we have Rachel Carson come into the conversation. So, Rachel Carson, among other things, was an American marine biologist. She took great interest in what was happening with these bird populations, and she did a ton of research. So, she interviewed chemical workers, farmers, biologists, doctors, and she compiled all of this research into this book on the right here, which is called Silent Spring. It was published in 1962 and was such a watershed moment for the environment because the chemical corporations, they knew exactly what their DDT was doing. But did they want to tell anybody? No, because they wanted to continue to make profit off of it. And they were completely outraged when people started reading Silent Spring. They tried to discredit Rachel Carson, among other things, because she was a woman. And they also threatened her publisher. But fortunately, all of the negative attention that they were giving to her put put tons of people interested in, well, hey, why are they saying these things about her? What is it about her work that is so controversial? So a lot more people started to read her work, and then we have the start of the environmentalist movement because of it. We have the EPA. We have laws and policies being enacted to protect the environment. So by 1972, DDT was banned in all cases except for extreme emergency uses. So thank you very much, Rachel Carson. We owe you an awful lot. Okay, so we got the DDT starting to be under control. How do we bring back the raptor populations now, especially in areas where they are just gone? This is where we get into Tom Cade. Among other things, Tom Cade was a Cornell professor and a falconer, and he used the skills that he learned through falconry to bring back the peregrine falcon populations. So we're talking like Old England falconry. What they would do was the falconers would take unfledged chicks of the birds that they wanted to use for falconry. They would put them in a wagon, and another word for a wagon at that time was called a hack, Hack, and they would put this wagon with the chicks up on a hilltop. They would put some food in for the chicks and they would observe them, and the chicks would fledge. They would gain some experience flying around and hunting, and then the falconers would recapture them and start their official falconry training for whatever noble wanted to use them. So Tom Cade looked at that and said, aha, he took the concept of he took the concept of the hack box, and that's what you see on this right picture here. That is a hack site. He developed these hack boxes where they would take captive bred peregrine falcon chicks, which, side note, were first successfully captive bred by a SUNY New Paltz professor named Heinz Mang. They would take these captively bred peregrine falcon chicks and put them in these hack boxes once they were ready to go. They would feed them, they would monitor them, minimal human interaction. And when they were ready to start fledging, they would just open up the box, and rather than recapturing them for training, they would just let the falcons go out into the wild and do their migration, do their own nesting, and hopefully start their own families. And this worked really well. So by the 90s, peregrine falcons were off the endangered species list, which is amazing. They did this technique for other raptors as well. So, thanks to that effort, we can see a lot more raptors around than we used to be able to. Now, here at UMass Amherst, we had a small part to play in that. In 1988, we had two graduate biology students who received 5 peregrine falcon chicks from Tom Cade's Peregrine Fund. They set up a hack box on the Lincoln Campus Center, and they hacked these 5 chicks, and they fledged, and they successfully went off into the wild. And then, as I said earlier, 10 years later, my colleague Richard Nathorst petitioned for us to get a nest box on the Du Bois Library in order to encourage peregrine falcons to stake claim to the territory area that we have. And it took a couple of years, but I believe 2004 was when we had our first officially banded chicks fledge from the nest box. And for the most part, every year we've had a really good success rate. In 2012, that was when we put the live stream camera up. And we're really excited because for the past several years, we haven't had to take it down, which means we've had great educational and research opportunities to study the falcons during nesting season and outside of nesting season. And that's how we've been able to see all of the drama that has been happening up on the roof this year, which I am now going to talk about. So we've got a soap opera going on right now, and that is because our resident female for the past 2 years, Miriam. She unfortunately was either killed or driven off last summer. And since then, it's kind of been a revolving door of of different females vying for the territory. In a way, it's kind of disappointing because it means that we've had so much territorial disputes that we haven't had a successful nesting season. At this point, we should have been seeing eggs. But on the other hand, it means that the peregrine falcon population has successfully been restored. So, the fact that we're seeing all these territorial disputes means there are a lot more falcons in the area, and that's really great coming from an area where we had absolutely none a couple decades ago. So, the picture on the top left here, that is who we've called window female, just because she unfortunately crashed into a window in January, but she's okay. She survived. Um, but that's how we've been distinguishing her. And she had been around our nest box from last year, late summer, early fall through just a couple weeks ago. We thought she was the front runner candidate for being Webster's new mate because peregrine falcons, while they do mate for life, if their mate gets killed or driven off, they will seek out a new mate. Unfortunately, she has been challenged quite a bit by other interloping females currently seeking to establish their own territories, such as that one on the bottom left. That was one of the challengers that came through. And then we had a very interesting incident March 27th, so not too long ago. That is the picture that you see on the top right there. So he's not able to be seen, but Webster is actually inside the nest box in this picture. And those two falcons outside the nest box bowing to each other, those are both females. They weren't attacking each other, they were bowing to each other. And we shared this incident with our Mass Wildlife colleagues, and they told us that while uncommon, it is not unheard of for a peregrine falcon pair to accept a third falcon in to help with egg incubation, chick rearing, and prey delivery, and all of that stuff. So for a minute, we thought, okay, we've got a Three's Company situation up there. This is going to be really interesting. Um, and unfortunately, it turned out that um, we ended up losing both of those two females. They were driven off by the female on the bottom right picture there. Now, she looks a little different, right? That's because she's a first year female and she's still getting in her adult peregrine falcon plumage. Now, she came in the weekend after that incident, and we're she's been holding the territory. Hold on, I got a message in the chat. I just want to make sure. Ah, maybe name for window female is Finestra, Italian for window. That would be cool. What we were planning on doing is if window female was the um candidate that Webster went with for his next mate, when she laid eggs, we were going to hold a public naming contest for her so she didn't have to go by window female. Um Unfortunately, she is not seemingly in the picture right now. So we've seen Webster and this first year female, bottom right picture. They've done a lot of pair bonding together. She's been showing a lot of the right instincts for nesting. So she's been doing the scraping out of a depression in the gravel in the nest box. And that's usually where they will lay their eggs. She and Webster have both been doing that. He's been bowing to her. They've been sharing a lot of pair bonding. Um, he's been bringing her prey items. And actually, just this morning, one of our Falcon fans notified us that there was an attempted mating. Unfortunately, it was unsuccessful, but that leads us to believe that there may have been or will be other successful mating attempts between Webster and this new female. Typically, falcons don't start nesting until they're 2 to 3 years old. But again, we reached out to our Mass Wildlife colleagues, and they said that it is possible that she could lay a viable egg or two. But we are getting a little late in the season. We have, I believe they said until mid-May, and then after that, it's pretty much a washout for the season. So we'll have to keep an eye on what's going on, and we are just as curious to see what's going to happen as you all are. Okay, so I'm going to stop my share because that is my presentation, and I am happy to take a few questions if anybody has questions, and we can go through a few of those. Otherwise, um, we can end a little earlier and give y'all some time back. Let me find the chat. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I will do my best to answer them. And if there's a question that I can't answer, I can reach out to my Du Bois Falcon team members and we can try to answer them for you. Link to view the Falcons. That is a good question. Let me actually put that in the chat right now. Hold on one second, I'll grab it. One second. There we are. Put that in the Zoom chat right now for everybody. Okay, this is the link to see our live stream, and it also contains our link to our award-winning free and open Falcon curriculum. So if you want to learn about Falcons, if you have somebody at home, a little one who's interested, we have lesson plans that are connected to the Common Core for Massachusetts, and it's free to be open and adapted for any purposes. Okay, I have a couple questions in the chat. Eagles will prioritize feeding an insistent chick before a more timid one. Do falcons and other raptors do the same? We have seen some of our chicks be much more insistent on pushing their way to the front, and those are usually the ones that hatch first and have just a little bit of an edge on, say, the chick that hatches last. So yes, we have seen that, but they will, we've never seen in the time that I've been here, which is about 9 years, I haven't seen them starve any of their chicks. Is she considered Webster's mate now? If so, will mass wildlife banter? I'm assuming that's referring to our first year female. Um, at this point, she seems to be Webster's chosen mate. The question of will mass wildlife banter? We typically don't band adult falcons, even though it would be great if we could. It's just because they're a little harder to catch versus an unfledged chick who can't really go anywhere. If we have an opportunity to band her, I'm sure that we will. Anticoagulant rodenticides a problem at UMass. Okay, so for peregrine falcons, because they typically don't eat they don't eat they don't eat mice, they don't eat things like that. They eat birds. So I'm not as familiar with um the problem with birds that do eat rodents. I do know that peregrine falcons, they just eat what's in the sky. So for peregrine falcons, I don't think that's a problem. I can reach out to Mass Wildlife and ask their opinions on that. But for peregrine falcons, since they eat birds, that's not something that I've ever seen happen. Do juvenile fal do juvenile falcons trying to find their own territory get into territorial disputes with other birds of prey like red-tailed hawks? That is a good question. It is entirely possible. We do have hawks on campus. That's actually one of the things that we get sent a lot saying, hey, I think I saw one of your falcons. Typically a hawk, we've seen all sorts on campus. I've never seen them get into a fight, but I would assume that that is something that could happen. I will message Richard about that. Do you know how many successful hatchlings there have been from UMass's box? I do, over 50. We've had over 50 successful chicks fledge and be banded from our nest box, which is amazing. I saw a juvenile red-tailed hawk with a squirrel on my walk into office on Monday. Yep, that's a lot of the pictures that we get sent. A lot of red-tailed hawks eating the squirrels. And it's like, those are really cool pictures, and we love seeing them. So we're happy to take a look at any pictures that you have, even if you know they're not a peregrine. We love seeing the wildlife on campus, so feel free to send them our way. Where do you send pictures? I will put my email address in the chat. Feel free to message me any and all things falcon related, bird related. Um, Love to see it. You can also reach out to us on our Du Bois Falcons Facebook page and Instagram, which is just at Du Bois Falcons on both of them. Another thing I would love to mention is if you like this presentation, if you know of any teachers in the area who might want to share some of this information with their students, I do Zoom classroom sessions. I have one actually next week, so happy to do that as well for teachers. And I have a special modified version of the presentation that is geared towards younger audiences if necessary. Cool. Um, I'm sad that his new lover seems a bit young for eggs and we might have to wait a season. Yeah. Something that my colleague Richard has talked about, we email back and forth constantly this time of year. And something that he mentioned was although it is sad that we might not see eggs and chicks this year, it's kind of a natural thing for populations to, if there's too many in the area, the success of nestings might start to decline in order to just balance things out. It's just Mother Nature's way of doing things. So we'll just have to wait and see. And, if all goes well, we'll probably see eggs hopefully next year. She seems to have all the right instincts, this first year female, so we'll see what happens. Can I share this recording with education volunteers at the Cascades Raptor Center? Absolutely. We actually have a ton of videos on our YouTube channel for the Falcon curriculum. This one I will transcribe and caption, and I will share it once we have the closed captioning all set. We like to make sure it's as compliant as possible for people. Falcon Cam needs a sign in. It shouldn't. Um, it's just a YouTube. It's a YouTube link on that library.umass.edu/falcons. How far apart do falcon pairs nest from each other? How big is their territory? I was told that it's approximately a mile around is their territory. Could be a little more, could be a little less. So a couple people have suggested, oh, well, you've got two nest boxes, right? You've got the one in the Du Bois Library, and then there was an old one on South College that the Falcons used while we were renovating the box on Du Bois a couple years ago. Why can't we just have a couple pairs? It's because that's way too close for them. Um, I know my colleague Richard is in talks with Mass Wildlife to see if we can scout out the valley and see if there are other places where we can put up nest boxes in conserved land areas so that we can maybe ease up the pressure on our box. But that's all talk right now. If we get any information on that or if anything progresses, I will certainly update via the social media pages that we have. How do you identify a first year female? We know that our current female in the box is a first year female because she doesn't have the the totally gray and white Peregrine Falcon adult coloring yet. If you look at her, she's still got the brownish, it's like grayish brownish, and she's still got the juvenile pattern on her front side. So she's still getting in her adult feathers and yeah, it's really interesting to see. I've never seen a first year Falcon come by and try to take over the territory, but she withstood the attacks of all the other females and she's holding her own. Um, any other questions before we kind of log off for the day and give you back about 10 minutes of found time? If you have further questions that you think of after the fact, again, feel free to email me, and I am more than happy to talk all things Falcon after this. And I just want to say thank you again to everybody who joined in because this is one of my favorite parts of my job, getting to do outreach about our rooftop residents. Um, in that case, I will say thank you so much for joining us and have a great weekend and keep an eye on the nest box along with us because, it's constantly changing up there. It's a big old soap opera and I guess they're just kind of winging it. Thank seriously though, thank you everybody and I hope you have a great day. Bye.